The sun dipped low over the horizon as Reeve Langston stepped off the sky trailer. Boots crunching against the dry, cracked earth of Dust Creek, the Texas wind welcomed him with a warm gust, carrying the scent of mesquite and old memories. After 30 years in orbit, commanding Earth's orbital governance networks, he was finally home, or so he thought. His ranch looked mostly the same rusted windmill. Cedar post fencing, the silhouette of the barn against a blood-orange sky. The house had a few solar upgrades he didn't authorize, and a synthetic grass overlay now covered part of the front lawn. Odd, but nothing that couldn't be peeled back. He walked up the porch, touching the wood railing. A flicker of warmth pulsed under his palm, still encoded with his biometric signature. The security door unlatched silently. "Welcome home, Commander Langston," said the AI in the house's neural core. But peace was short-lived. Less than 10 minutes later, a loud hum interrupted the silence. An HOA hovercruiser, painted an obnoxious blend of white and gray, descended rapidly into his driveway. Reeve watched as it hissed open and out stepped a woman in her 50s. Dressed like a suburban admiral blazer, knee-length skirt, HOA-issued boots, and a tablet clutched tight to her chest. "Ash, you can't be here," she barked. "This property has been under Dust Creek HOA jurisdiction since 2045. No record of reoccupancy was filed. And that house paint, it's not in the neighborhood palette." Reeve raised an eyebrow. "I own this land. Always have. Since 2012. She squinted at her tablet. "Not according to our system. You're not on the approved resident list. In fact, your file is marked ... archived." "That's one way of saying I was off-world," he replied calmly. "I don't care if you were in another dimension," she snapped. "We have protocol. You're trespassing. We've already contacted the county enforcement and our HOA patrol drones. They'll be here in minutes." Reeve didn't flinch. He looked past her, taking in the sight of the once free land now boxed into color-coded lots and digital fences. Surveillance towers blinked from hidden spots among the mesquite. Road hoverboards silently in designated zones, watched by floating HOA monitors. It wasn't just regulation. It was oppression masquerading as order. "I see Dust Creek's changed," he said more to himself than to her. Karen he hadn't asked. Her name, but he didn't need to, snorted. "Changed for the better. We've eliminated wild animals, noise, yard debris, unapproved solar angles, and spontaneous human behavior. You're not going to ruin that with your cowboy nostalgia." Reeve looked at her for a long moment, then simply walked inside. Her voice followed him. "You'll regret this. You can't defy HOA law." Inside, he moved to the command console embedded in his kitchen island and placed his hand on the biometric reader. A silent pulse of blue light spread through the house. The screen flashed. "Authority clearance. United HOA Network Administrator Reeve. Langston status. Active command functions. ENABLD outside." Karen paced nervously, trying to contact the HOA network. Her tablet froze. Her messages failed to send. She tapped and cursed, rebooted, and tapped again. Reeve watched from inside. Not yet. Let her stew a little longer. He poured himself a glass of rain-purified bourbon he'd stored decades ago and sipped it slowly. The house hummed gently, resyncing with National Grid Authority. Karen's voice turned from confident to frantic. "Why won't the system respond? Why can't I override?" Reeve stepped onto the porch, his voice calm and controlled. "I didn't come here to start trouble, but you've mistaken me for someone under your rule." "Who do you think you are?" she demanded. "I don't think he said." "I know. I oversee every HOA in the United States." Karen stared, blinking. Her tablet flickered once more. Then it shut off entirely. Karen stood frozen on the gravel, staring at her lifeless tablet, like it had personally betrayed her. Mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Behind her, the HOA cruiser's emergency lights still pulsed a signal for backup that would never come. Reeve watched her in silence, sipping his bourbon, letting the weight of her powerlessness sink in. Inside her mind, Karen scrambled to make sense of the sudden breakdown. The Dust Creek HOA system had never failed her. She had run this community, Like a machine, every rule enforced, every deviation punished. But now, the gears had jammed and the machine was collapsing. "You're bluffing," she finally spat. "There's no such thing as a national HOA overseer. That's not how it works. HOAs are local, independent. We govern ourselves." It raised a brow. "That's what they tell the public." Karen narrowed her eyes. "You're lying. You're just some burned-out ex-military type squatting on a property that was repossessed years ago." He leaned against the porch post, relaxed, but his tone was firmer now. 30 years ago, after the urban sprawl wars, Congress passed the Unified Housing Accord. All HOAs were linked to a central AI governance system to prevent corruption and abuse. I was appointed director of that system by executive order. My authority was coded into the national neural infrastructure. Karen shook her head, eyes wide. "Impossible." "That would mean it means I've seen every complaint you filed, every fine you issued, every yard sign you banned, every child's chalk art you power-washed off sidewalks. I know you filed 32 complaints against a blind man for not trimming his hedges, and you had a veteran's flag forcibly removed because it was 1 inch out of spec." Her breath hitched. "You don't have the right to dig through private HOA data?" Reeves stepped down from the porch slowly, the dust swirling around his boots. "I have more than the right. I wrote the access protocols." In the distance, the whir of patrol drones could be heard, but they weren't approaching. Instead, they hovered at a distance, holding position, as if waiting for new instructions. Karen's hands trembled. She reached for her earpiece, trying. A manual override. "HOA Central, respond." "HOA Central, this is Regional Enforcer Karen M. Lockley, requesting immediate escalation." Only static answered her. "Karen," Reeves said gently, "the system has already recognized my return. Your status as Regional Enforcer has been revoked. You're no longer in control here." She took a step back, her pride cracking. "You can't do that. I built this community. These people respect me." Reeve looked at her without anger, only a quiet sadness. "No, Karen, they feared you. They obeyed you. But fear and obedience aren't the same as respect." He turned. "Dust Creek into a surveillance state with HOA bylaws as your weapon. You enforced perfection and punished humanity. You think you can do better?" She sneered, trying to regain her footing. "I don't want to rule Dust Creek. I want it to breathe again." A sudden chime rang out from all smart devices in the neighborhood phones. Tablets, house speakers, even embedded neural implants. A calm voice, synthesized from Reeves' command code, echoed, "This is an official broadcast from the United HOA Network Authority. Regional oversight has been suspended pending investigation. Community restrictions are now under national audit. Please remain calm." Khan's knees buckled slightly. She looked around as residents stepped out of their houses, confused, holding devices in hand. All of them were staring at the same message. Reeve turned toward the open sky, where satellites blinked faintly in the dusk, syncing systems coast to coast. He didn't need to say anything more. First domino had already fallen, and Karen, who had ruled Dust Creek, like a queen, was about to find out what it felt like to live under the rules she once wrote for everyone else. Karen's face drained of color as she stared up at the message flashing across every screen in Dust Creek. Her mind, usually sharp and calculating, struggled to process what was happening. The HOA system she had mastered, bent to her will, was now slipping through her fingers like sand. And the man standing in front of Hertha, one she'd just threatened with eviction, was calmly dismantling it all with a few silent commands. Inside the ranch house, Reeve accessed the Omega protocol. The interface lit up with rotating spheres of data, glowing in complex streams of blue and white. The system had lain dormant for over 2 decades, waiting for his biometric signature to activate. Now, it pulsed with life, connected to every HOA command node across the country. "Initialize," he said. Omega protocol engaged. Nationwide HOA Authority, synchronization in progress. Dust Creek was only the beginning. Outside, patrol drones faltered in their hover patterns. Their red scanning lights dimmed, and their aggressive posture softened. Instead of approaching the ranch, they began to hover neutrally, awaiting new directives from the central grid. Residents stepped out of their homes, confused by the glitching drones, flickering perimeter lights, and the loss of access to the neighborhood portal. Their community rules, enforcement schedules, and fines all vanished from their devices. Karen frantically waved her dead tablet in front of Reeve. "You can't do this. This is illegal. Unauthorized control of HOA systems is a federal offense." Reeve stepped down from his porch with calm certainty. "Not when you are the federal system." She pointed at him, her voice cracking. "You're insane. You're just a relic of an outdated bureaucracy. This is abuse of power." He met her eyes. "No, Karen, what you did for 20 years, that was abuse of power. Finding families for leaving their garage doors open too long, removing swings because they weren't aesthetically conforming, evicting elderly residents who couldn't comply with lawn maintenance schedules. You turned neighborhoods into war zones." Karen clenched her jaw. "You don't understand what it takes to maintain order." "I understand exactly what it takes. That's why I built a system meant to guide, not dominate. A system you and your kind corrupted with personal vendettas and bureaucratic bullying." Behind them, holographic screens began to appear in the air, projected from dormant HOA nodes. A map of the United States formed, red markers lighting up across hundreds of neighborhoods. These were the flagged HOAs, those under the rule of enforcers like Karen. One by one, the markers began turning blue. In a central display, Karen's name appeared with a flashing alert. Authority level, revoked pending oversight hearing privileges. Suspended, her mouth opened and closed, but no words came. For the first time in decades, she was silent. Residents of Dust Creek gathered near the road, murmuring, checking their own devices. Some had tears in their eyes. Others looked around in wonder, seeing their homes not as grid units in a tightly controlled community, but as places of life again. A little girl skipped chalk across the sidewalk. No one stopped her. Reeve turned to the crowd. "You're free to speak, free to question, free to live. The system will still maintain order, but not at the cost of your dignity." One man raised his hand. "Are you replacing the HOA?" "No," Reeve replied. "I'm rebuilding it from the inside. It's transparent. Community-led, AI-assisted, but never again authoritarian." Karen took one last desperate step forward. "I won't accept this. The other enforcers, the national chapter, they'll come after you. They already have," Reeve said, gesturing toward the map. "And they lost. The protocol is spreading. Resistance is already crumbling." Karen looked around at the neighbors who once feared her. Now, they were looking right through her as if she no longer existed. Because in the system that once served her every whim, she'd inside the ranch house, 1,000 streams of data flowed across transparent screens like living threads of light. Reeve stood at the helm of the system's command interface, watching as community after community connected to the Omega network. From gated suburbs in Arizona to synthetic pod houses in New York's vertical communes, the signal was reaching them all. He was no longer just overseeing Dust Creek, he was awakening the entire nation. Outside, Karen sat on the curb in stunned silence. The authority she once wielded with iron precision had vanished in the span of minutes. Her name, once a command, was now a warning in the system, revoked, disgraced, powerless. But Reeve wasn't done. What had happened here wasn't just a correction. It was a revelation that had to reach every corner of the country. He turned back to the interface and opened a secure channel to the national HOA communications grid. A high-level encrypted broadcast frequency designed for emergencies and top-level mandates. "Begin transmission," he commanded the system. Responded with a soothing chime, and suddenly all across the United States. Smart home speakers, wall panels, neural headsets, and even vehicles paused their functions. Screens went black, then displayed a simple blue seal, United HOA Network. Authority. Seconds later, Reeve's face appeared in crisp, steady light. His voice followed, calm and resolute. This is Commander Reeve Langston. I am the original architect and overseer of the United HOA Neural Governance System. You may not know my name, but for decades, I've been watching, waiting, and documenting. And now, I can no longer stay silent. In homes, parks, and apartments, people froze to listen. For years, a decentralized patchwork of homeowners associations evolved beyond its original intent. What began as a system to protect property values and safety became a tool of oppression. Under the guise of community standards, many of you were fined, surveilled, and bullied by people more concerned with control than care. Reeve tapped the screen beside him. Dozens of video clips appeared. HOA officers confronting disabled veterans over lawn height, families forced to remove cultural decorations, single mothers harassed for minor violations, communities locked behind ironclad codes that punished creativity and humanity. These are not isolated events, he continued. They are patterns. Patterns reveal intent. Paused, letting the truth settle, but no more. The screen shifted to a network visual maps lighting up with converted zones. The Omega Protocol has resynced the entire national HOA grid to its original parameters. Local enforcers no longer have unchecked power. All punitive systems are frozen. All fines, liens, and penalties are under audit. And every homeowner now has equal access to the decision-making systems of their community. Crowds watching in living rooms and town squares erupted in whispers, then cheers. This is not about chaos, Reeve said. It's about balance. We will still maintain order, but with fairness, with transparency, with humanity. He looked directly into the camera. And to those who use the system for personal power, your time is over. You will answer for what you've done, beginning with Dust Creek. In a final symbolic gesture, he pressed a single button. Outside, the main HOA surveillance node in the center of the town square collapsed in on itself. It didn't explode, it simply deactivated, its hovering drones retracting like dead petals. All data had already been uploaded and secured. The symbol of control was gone. Karen, still sitting on the curb, stared in horror and disbelief. They'll never follow you. People need structure. They need rules. Reeve stepped out, walking past her. They need trust. And you destroyed that. The broadcast ended, but the ripple had only just begun. Across the country, people were taking back their neighborhoods. The HOA empire built on fear was crumbling. And for the first time in years, America was breathing again. The sun was setting over Dust Creek, casting a golden hue across the horizon as neighbors slowly gathered around Reeve's ranch. What had once been a place of isolation, a property watched with suspicion and regulated into near abandonment, was now the center of a new beginning. Fences that had once separated lots had gone transparent, both literally and symbolically. The old HOA perimeter fields had powered down, their invisible walls collapsing with them. Karen remained near the sidewalk, her presence now awkward and uncertain. People who once nodded nervously at her or avoided her, I altogether walked right past her without acknowledgement. No more salutes. No more compliance. She was just another resident, now stripped of the authority she had clung to like armor. Reeve stood at the center of the property, just beneath the old mesquite tree, surrounded by men, women, and children who had finally come out without fear of being watched. A group of teens rode modified hoverboards through the street, their laughter unfiltered. An elderly couple leaned against the fence, laughing for the first time in years. Even the local vendors, once kept out for violating HOA commercial neutrality, had parked their food carts nearby, serving tacos and sweet tea. Reeve looked around, took a breath, and raised his voice. For too long, he said, this community and others like it have operated under a system that was never meant to dominate. It was designed to support, to help. But what it became was a cage. Heads nodded around him. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Not anymore." I didn't come here to take over, Reeve continued. I came to return things to the way they were meant to. Be communities run by people, not algorithms or unchecked authority. More invisible rules. No more secret fines. No more robotic patrols enforcing nonsense. He tapped a device on his wrist, and a soft pulse spread across the area. A new interface appeared on every smart device present. Community Council registration. Open, transparent, vote-based. Every one of you now has a voice. Not just a vote every few years. You'll see where the funds go. You'll have a say in the codes, if they exist at all. The AI is no longer your enforcer. It's your assistant. A woman near the front spoke up. And if someone tries to hijack it again. Reeve nodded solemnly. There are safeguards now. No more single-point authority, no more locked permissions. Every HOA council from here forward will operate like a cooperative, decentralized, transparent, and accountable. Abuse the system, and you're locked out by consensus, not command. Wow. There were cheers. Not thunderous or theatrical, just genuine. Relief. Like the exhale of a town that had held its breath for too long. Karen finally stepped forward. Her voice was shaky but audible.
Why are